now, John Nesbit.
Some of this story might be found in the advertising section of the daily newspapers, but most of it happened to come to me from a boy with whom I went to school in Piedmont, California many years ago. We met together as grown men on a San Francisco ferry boat, and as we crossed the bay, I happened to hear one of those personal accounts that I like to collect as men who never made a headline. Now, I'm going to start out with some of the actual articles which we like to use as clues in the building of a story. The principal clue in this case is this stack of books. It's the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's much beaten up, and it has a couple of volumes missing, which you will learn more about later on. A different kind of document is this death certificate. It was issued during the influenza epidemic which followed the First World War. And the remaining clues in this case are this Reuter's cap and a college diploma. Now, all of these articles belonged to a junk man. And as sometimes seems right when you're telling private family history, only the names will be changed. And I'm going to try to relate this story just about as the junk man's son, Alex Semenian, told it to me. This heap of rusting scrap metal looked like a treasure to Jules Semenian, who arrived here in 1918, for he had been a peddler in the old land, and the salvaging of junk was to him the most ancient and respectable of occupations. The brass bed might qualify as junk, but when his first employer bestowed it upon him, to Jules it seemed beyond belief that he might have it. It will become his young wife's deathbed, but now it is simply a glittering property for a man awaiting the arrival of a family.
This is a fine house you have given us for no rent, Mr. Constantine. I thank you. And my wife will thank you, too, when she comes from the old country with our two little baby boys. Excuse. Jay Semenian talking. Yes, I will look at this stuff. No. You bring this stuff over to our yard. It's my pleasure. Well, I thank you very much. Hey, goodbye.
My cousin, it is not our junkyard, it is my junkyard.
Oh, aren't they unbelievable? The Encyclopedia Britannica. And what a bargain. I got the whole bunch for only $1. My sons will learn all that is printed here. 100% of the knowledge of the world.
90%.
90?
Volumes 8 and 14 are missing.
2? Are you sure?
Certainly I am sure. I can read.
"10 days after the joyful family reunion, he stands there, a frantic, terrified man, the infants crying lustily for feeding, and in the proud brass bed, the mother who could no longer hear that call."
Are they not wonderful babies? See how they stop crying so they will not disturb their mama. Just think how smart they are. You will understand, will you not? That I am feeding them just like you want me to. Don't you worry, my pretty. I will take very good care of them. And Philip shall be your eyes. And Alexander, your soft, sweet mouth. Mr. Constantine! Trinity, will you, in the name of God, come and awaken her?
From this moment, he poured his loneliness into making the junkyard a success, toiling just as if he blamed his poverty for the mother's loss. But the startled Mr. Constantine began to recognize he'd found his master in the arts of converting junk to gold. So the bank account grew, and yet it remained his chief delight to prepare the children's food and fill the mother's role, perhaps his loving era of ownership beginning then. But to Philip there and Alex, these were the happiest times together.
No, my sons. Tonight the dishes can wait. It is time that we make use of the words that the public schools teach you to read. Now, before your mama bring you over from the old country, I bought you these wonderful books so that you will not grow up so ignorant as Papa. You will take turns reading them until you have learned the knowledge of the world. All but a little 10%.
The Encyclopedia Britannica, a dictionary of arts, sciences, literature, and general information.
Jackson, Andrew, 7th President of the United States.
Protoplasm, the name given to a substance composing
Travnik, the capital of a department of the same name.
He was fond of saying that when a man spends next to nothing, he can afford to be rich. What he really meant was that for the boys, he would always afford nothing but the best. And a fashionable academy was his first surprise.
Well, here we are. Now, instead of foreign accents and junk, a military academy with uniforms and riding horses and table manners.
But, Father, why do we have to leave home?
Oh, you must understand, my little boys. A junkyard is good enough for Papa, but not for you. In the academy here, you will be educated. You will live like princes. You will be Americans.
How do you do? I'm Major Voles. I hope you found everything satisfactory.
Oh, J. Saminian. And these are my two wonderful little boys whom you will educate. Oh, I brought their tuition. $1,000.
The two small Semenians drilled earnestly on the parade ground, and they plugged away at class for honors, not knowing they shared their father's drive to find success.
And now the final freshman class awards for scholarship in English literature and Latin go to cadets Alexander and Philip Semenian.
Bravo! Bravo! I'll say funny! I'll say funny! Bravo! 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 Bravo!
J. Semenian, highest prices paid, you call, we haul. J. Semenian now at 3 locations. The Golden Junk Man, unbelievable but true. While by the time the boys had reached their graduation ball, they were, as Alex said, finally sold on the idea that they were a couple of little princes. The truth being, as Alex also noted, they had become a couple of little 4-letter words, but call it snob.
You danced beautifully, Alex.
Oh, me, I got
2 left feet.
Oh, listen to your modest brother, Philip.
Oh, well, you don't study here, so it hasn't gotten around to you yet, but modesty is a very Semenian trait. Oh, everybody here can tell you it's very, very Semenian.
Phil, not here, huh?
And talking of Semenian traits, have you seen Dad's latest thing?
Cut it out, Phil. This is not funny.
Now, they've got to see it sooner or later. Everybody has. Golden Junk Man. Unbelievable, but true, that at every one of my 12 locations, I am celebrating my 16th year as the Golden Junk Man.
And this house was his great surprise when they went home for the last summer before college. All this to do them proud, they realized, except that now it seemed only gaudy and vulgar. 2 adolescents trapped in a world in which they felt quite certain they never would belong.
When does the auction start?
Hey, shut up. He's coming.
Alexander and Philip Semenian. J. Semenian talking. Well, how do you like your new furniture? Is it not unbelievable?
Yes.
Imagine, both of my boys graduating from military school with honors, both. And in the fall, college. And look, for study now that my boys are home to live again. And see these, almost like new. Come on, try them. And look at these beautiful desks. What a history behind them. Direct from the opera company that went broke because the manager run away with the money. Also, the fat prima donna.
Dad, look, there's something I want to talk to you about.
Later.
What is the use of waiting?
Later, Phil, later.
There is something?
Oh, it's nothing, Dad.
What is the use of waiting, Alex? He's got to know. Now, Dad, we'd like to stay at college for a while, be on our own.
Oh, tell everything.
Oh, well, that's all that there is, Dad.
It's not all. Tell it, Philip. Tell it.
All right. If you must know, we can't live in this museum. We're sick of your newspaper ads, of being laughed at. The way you act, Dad, like a peddler.
That's enough, Phil. Dad, it's what our friends think.
Your friends? When did you ever invite even one of your friends to our house? When did you ever do anything but make 1,000 excuses? I get you all these rich things. I count the hours till you come home. I work day and night for you.
That's just it, Dan. You're smothering us.
I should die. I should die before I make you ashamed of me.
I've had enough.
And you, my son Alexander, have you also had enough? Or would you like to see what an ignorant, dirty peddler your father really is?
Dad, please.
Shall I show you? I'll show you.
As Alex remembered it, the chief reason they went off to State University was just because Father had considered Colton College the more exclusive, plugging at the homework hard as ever, finding it good standing alone and all that, not finding it so good when they thought of the bitter look in their father's eyes.
Forgive me for intruding, Mr. Semenian, but I had to come.
You are welcome, cousin. Welcome. Sit down right there.
I can stay only a moment. Today I received a letter from your sons.
Oh. How are they?
Well?
Do they like college? Do they need anything?
They ask why you do not answer their letters.
I got nothing to say to them.
Excuse me, Mr. Semenian, but it is you who are to blame. You who forced them to become educated gentlemen.
while I remained an ignorant peddler. Because of my ambition for them, there has come this great ditch between us. They can never cross back to me again. Tell me, my cousin, if you were me, what would you do?
If I were you, I would not find myself in such a predicament in the first place.
So, you have a big brain. But where is your junkyard? I own it, and 20 more like it. I, J. Saminian.
So, where are your sons, J. Saminian?
But don't worry. J. Saminian hadn't run a single pile of scrap iron into 20 locations by wandering around in a daze very much of his life. He was able to study, it seems, by photographing whole paragraphs at a time on his memory. And he could very soon quote you anything from the second law of thermodynamics to the third wife of Henry VIII. And that autumn, among the freshmen lining up to register at exclusive Colton College was J. Saminian in person, who had passed the College Board exams in one triumphant sweep. But during the first day at Colton, he often said that he felt like Methuselah muscling in on a kindergarten party.
The good location for school. Lots of students.
And in spite of his fabulous memory for print, in class at first he had great difficulty in trying to learn by ear. So the faculty of Colton College was somewhat of a problem for him, when he wasn't something of a problem for the faculty of Colton College.
And stating that these are the facts.
If the professor will excuse me. I'm sure the professor will correct my ignorance. I know that the professor is right. Of course the professor is right. But in that case, in volume 1, page 192, Encyclopedia Britannica, is a mistake. On the bottom of the page.
Later, Saminian.
Saminian, I should like a word with you before you go. Class dismissed.
Don't worry.
Professor Scott, I am very sorry. I apologize. A student should not correct his professor in class.
Can you hear anything?
I wonder what's going to happen to the poor guy. I told him to stop correcting the professors. I told him he'd get into trouble. Did he raise the roof with you, Saminian?
Oh, what do you care? You were right. I think he was mean to bawl you out.
What happened?
He told me they promote me to sophomore.
Already?
But to the end of his life, he was the most fanatical rooter that Colton ever had. At the annual big game with State, he would shake the stands shouting that Colton players were gentlemen of honor and the State team was beyond contempt. Jewel's word, in his old-fashioned slang, being that they were no good bozos.
All right, ready. 1, 2, 3, down. Ready. 1, 2, 3, up. Comedian.
Although Jules did boffle up the rooting cards, he mastered about everything else. 70 hours of classroom and study each week, 2 calendar years only, special examinations for him, and the 3 Saminians were about to meet again.
Well, what's wrong, Saminian?
I am finished, Professor.
Well, but you have 2 hours yet.
I know, but I am finished.
Well, but don't you want to use the time to check your answers?
Excuse me, Professor, but I think they are right.
Yes. Yes, I imagine they are.
And up at State, 2 juniors received a visit from Mr. Constantine, now in his most solemn way, stage managing the final act of an original J. Semenian production.
Mr. Constantine.
Hi, Mr. Constantine. Why'd you tell us you were coming down?
Hello, boys.
Say, nothing's wrong with Dad, is there?
Oh, no. I just left him.
Oh, he's back. Is he all right?
You would not recognize him. I come because I want you to do something for me. And no questions asked, no explanations, yes?
Yes, if you like.
I want you should come with me tomorrow night.
Well, what are we...
No questions, please. A favor I ask.
Well, sure, of course.
I pick you up at 6 tomorrow night.
At 6?
Tomorrow night.
Okay, Mr. Constantine.
I telephone you before I come.
Okay. Goodbye. Could it be something to do with Dad, Phil?
Oh, I don't know.
I hope he's all right. It's been 2 years since we've seen him.
Yeah, well, I miss the old guy, too.
Visitors from State moving through the shadows toward the faculty club of Colton, and inside a dean saying astounding things about a father, a special ceremony to present him with a diploma, students and pretty co-eds sitting there like old friends, and the 2 young Semenians not looking at each other and hiding a little terror as to what a father might say, forgetting for this moment that it was only their achievements that had ever brought from him the too loud and too noisy shout of triumph.
I want to thank all of you for this great honor. And I especially want to thank my professors who put up with a comical student who came into their classrooms with an encyclopedia in their head. I came here because I was the father who lost his 2 sons. I thought that this was all I would need to reach them. I thought I would say, well, what do you think of me now, huh? J. Semenian, the biggest junk man in this whole state. And now, a Bachelor of Arts like you. But I was wrong. You showed me. You took me into your hearts and gave me a part in your world. Your young world. You helped me to understand my 2 sons. If I can reach them, it's because of you. And now you must excuse a very middle-aged fellow student for thinking that you're much too young to know how beautiful you are. And as for my 2 boys, who are sometimes troubled about their father making a fool of himself, I say this. I wouldn't let a couple of bozos from another school lick me.
I think there may be a footnote or 2 remaining to the career of the Golden Junk Man, and after the announcement, I would like to bring them to you. I must tell you that the volumes of the Britannica we used here are replicas and are not the originals which were used by Jules, much as I wanted to have them. I did write to Alex asking to borrow them. Only then did I learn that Jules himself had done all of us out of taking any souvenirs. This is what Alex wrote. One morning after his college career closed, Father calmly bundled up his old set and along with a used bookcase, sold it for a couple of dollars. which figures out over 20 years to just a 100% profit, doesn't it? I saw the golden junk man only once, when I was a 4th grader in the school we showed you. And at that age, of course, I thought he was merely funny. So I was glad that I met Alex on the ferry boat shortly after his father had passed away, and learned then that, after all, no man's life is merely amusing. And now we're going to have the clues for the story to come. We obtained an old set of razors from the time when a man liked to have a blade for each day of the week, and a story came from them because a man decided not to use these regularly, but to grow a beard. When you break a law, you may get off, but when you break a fashion, you can't escape. And so these razors led us to the case of a man and his beard. So until next week, when we meet again for another story, good evening. How do you do, everyone? The clues to this story, which I have spread out on the desk in front of me, do not look at first as if they could contain any dramatic or important story at all. And yet you will find a set in the priceless Lennox collection in New York. A few very old newspapers, which you'll notice are dinky in size and are a rather measly job of printing as well. They were brought out in New York City a good 200 and more years ago, and the clue to the story lies in this gap, which you'll notice in the order of their issue. This tiny newspaper came out every week at first, until the editor in this issue printed some forbidden news. So the next week, the paper was missing, because the printer happened to be in jail during this period for libel, and his press smashed to bits, and its last issue ordered destroyed. Since the subject of this story is still one of the hottest issues in our country today, I hope we will be able to look through the powdered wigs and fancy costumes of the past, and there meet Grandpa, who still walks among us, and whose story we have called Grandpa Changes the World. When New York was in its beginning years, folks would walk 100 miles to take in a good trial. And here was a juicy one, governor accused of sneaking tax money, at which any self-respecting governor would sue for libel, even if he weren't respectable to begin with. So the man who had printed the scandal would be pitched into jail, where by law and tradition he belonged, and so it had always been. In this very old and rich room near Philadelphia, and as the governor rages in his palace and the printer crouches in his cell, a very old man sits sleeping out the last months of his life. Here rest around him the memories of a man who had walked with kings once, had riches and honors once, Andrew Hamilton, attorney to William Penn once, writer of law, teacher of law, twister of law, the great defender once. But now here he is only Grandpa, whom we must shake awake with that furious quarrel 100 miles away, awaken to try his last case and change the world.
Zenger's bail has been fixed. We will not sit here and listen to your complaints. If you persist...
We do persist, your lordship. The bail is unreasonable and exorbitant, and we do complain on behalf of Zenger, since it is our established right in law.
You are warned.
We must persist on another count. Governor Cosby is a party to this case. And since the officials of this colony derive their appointments from the governor, they should not sit in judgment.
You have been heard. Your meaning is clear. We find you in contempt of this court, and we hereby exclude you both from the practice of law in this court. We hereby order your names struck from the roll of attorneys recognized by this court.
I take it, Your Honor, that Your Honor intends to let us inform our client that we can no longer defend him. Or has this privilege been added to the list of rights that no longer exist in America?
The bailiff will conduct you to the prisoner.
But I have a wife and 3 children. I must earn our living as a printer.
Well, there is one thing. There is one thing by the Lord we can do. We can raise a mob, and we can riot, and we can make such a great noise it will wake up our sleepy king in England.
And permit Governor Cosby to hold us for committing treason. John, in conscience, I cannot counsel you not to alter your plea to guilty. You're in prison. We're not.
Well then, sir, would you have us conduct ourselves legally? so that they can legally keep our client in jail or send him to the slave plantations in Jamaica? Why, even if Andrew Hamilton himself were alive, he could not find a legal defense.
Our 10 minutes time allowed with you has expired. John, I believe we will have to advise you to change your plea. Oh, wait a moment. Wait. Andrew Hamilton is dead only as far as legal practice. He was my teacher once. He's alive, and I believe somewhere near Philadelphia. Hold up, blast the thing silent. We're coming. John, hold off for 3 days. We have that much time. Can you do it?
Yes, I guess I have to. You see, I came to this country from Germany, so I would be free to print the news.
Mr. Smith, you just might have named our sole remaining chance. You're a young fellow. You can stand a full gallop to Philadelphia. God bless you, sir. 3 days.
Idea. Perhaps he's not well. I shan't disturb him.
Oh, no, indeed, Mr. Smith. Grandpa will be delighted. He adores having anyone visit him.
But if he needs his sleep.
Yeah, have I a visitor?
Yes, Grandpa. A Mr. Smith from New York.
Delightful. Where is he?
Here, sir.
Oh. Have a glass of sherry, sir.
No, thanks. My name is William Smith. I'm associated in law with James Alexander. I feel I shouldn't have intruded.
Alexander? But you're not James Alexander. He's my very dear friend. I taught him the law. Sit down. Well, who's in trouble? Not Jim Alexander.
Well, sir, you see, until 4 days ago, Mr. Alexander and myself were defense counsel for a printer by the name of Zenger, John Zenger. He publishes a weekly journal of news. I have a supply of copies.
Yes, I read that journal, sir, every copy, but this slips my mind. Was it some treason against the king's governor? Who the devil let that idiot printer put such a thing in a public press?
Well, the truth is we did, sir. Mr. Alexander and myself, being legal advisors to the printer John Zenger, told him to go ahead and print them. But with the dedicated belief that the king, in sending us Governor Cosby, has given us a stupid, blundering, crooked thief who has stolen money from the public tax funds and bought racehorses with it.
Let's say it so. But one does not print it in the public press. And one does not advise a poor German printer to do it and get himself committed to jail. Mr. Smith, I'm going to be very cruel, sir. Why did you and Alexander advise your client to do this unless you were out of your minds?
Because we believed that we could get Governor Cosby into a libel suit. Then we could expose the governor in a public trial. However, when we protested the enormity of the bail set by the Chief Justice, we were both disbarred from the practice of law.
Mirabile dictu. Mr. Smith, you're very young. Why, if the public ever learned of the modern practice of law here, advising a client to commit a crime, being thrown into jail for it, then getting yourselves disbarred so you wouldn't have to defend him,
Every lawyer in America would be bankrupt within the fortnight.
I'm deeply sorry, Mr. Hamilton, but it was a matter of principle.
Principle? But the first duty of a defense counsel is to get a man out of jail, not with principles. This printer is guilty. I should know. I've had a hand in the writing of many decisions in these colonies. Well, I suppose Alexander sent you down to me because I am the only colonial who is admitted to the English bar. And hoping my unique reputation will qualify me to defend Zenger. You know, we keep the key up here. My great-grandchildren are always taking my court robes and wearing them for play costumes.
Here, allow me, sir.
Thank you. Well, I'll have to go by ship. I can no longer take the jolting of the stagecoach.
Excuse me, sir. I fear I'm stupid, but you consider trying this case personally?
You think it was a mistake coming from me. I could see it in your eyes. Yes. I'll take the case. If you want me.
Well, of course, sir. Of course.
As the official records put it in their dry old phrases, in little old New York in the summer of 1735, people had better manners than nowadays, except perhaps when they lost their tempers. Nevertheless, it must not be forgotten that His Grace our Governor was a stickler for the rules of legality, providing only that his courtroom officials did what he told them.
The only proper course is to support official authority on the American mainland.
While Mr. Hamilton, who so very often ignored the rules, began his struggle to throw off the weight of his 80 years.
Sir, if there's anything we can do, any help, we've prepared precedents from every similar case.
Gentlemen, there is no law. A great lawyer once said to me in England, there are 3 ways to fight a case. If the law's with you, pound the case. If the law's in doubt, pound the jury. If the law's against you, pound the table. It's been so terribly hot. Do you suppose we could ask them to open the courtroom doors when defense begins?
The defendant, Zenger, printed, and we shall have full witness that he did print such false, seditious, and scandalous libels. In issue number 5 of this same journal of his, the defendant, Zenger, published. Trial by jury is taken away when a governor pleases, who commits these acts for no other reason than to take money from the public treasury and put it into his own pocket. Further, in issue number 4...
Please, Your Honor. Mr. Attorney says these things are false and libelous and that my client printed them. To save Mr. Attorney the trouble of calling witnesses, I'll confess. My client printed and published them. He is guilty of doing so.
Then, if it please Your Honor, since Mr. Hamilton has confessed to the fact, I think our witnesses can now be discharged.
We so acknowledge and confess and abide by it.
Since Mr. Hamilton has confessed to these false libels, the jury must find a verdict for the prosecution.
Oh, we confess he printed them. But since you charge they are false, libeling a certain governor, well, you must prove just how false they were, or we're not guilty.
It is not necessary that a libel be false in order for libel to exist. True or false, libel is libel.
True, false, well, we're getting our roles mixed. Are you confessing, then, that these statements are true?
My charges could not be plainer, that the words published are treasonable and seditious.
Did Mr. Attorney forget and leave out the word false that time? Now, sir, do let's get on with it. And so that you will not be burdened with proving that the charges are false and the governor stole money, we'll offer you another bargain. That Zenger's printed charges are true. Mr. Attorney, Your Honor is getting slightly sweaty, as I predicted. Out of common consideration, we might open the street doors.
During an airing of this chamber, the court will recess.
I'm very sleepy, but we'll all have time for napping in court tomorrow. I'm sure the good Attorney General and Governor Cosby's bought judges will cite one boring precedent after another to prove that libel is libel, false or true. And we'll all sleep well tomorrow.
But then, sir, what defense are you planning?
You're a very impatient young man. If there's no law, I'd merely pound the table. Good night, gentlemen. I'll see you in court.
Thus, I have fully shown that the books are very full on libel, and that all agree that the truth of said libel need not be established. I now ask Your Honor the final opinion of this court.
Mr. Hamilton, the court holds the test of libel is limited only to whether or not it creates a scandal. There can be no doubt of it.
Your Honor, I thank you for clearing this matter up. There are 12 men who will decide whether John Peter Zenger lied or not.
No, Mr. Hamilton, that is not the issue. The jury may only find whether Zenger published the libel. The verdict is left to the court.
Gentlemen, I know you are proud and free subjects of the colony and the king. And I say that any government which will prosecute a man for libel, for speaking and publishing the truth, that government is a sword in the hands of a wicked king. And a jury is cowardly that will allow a representative of that government to so prosecute.
Mr. Hamilton, you are warned. If you go further, you risk treason to the king himself.
Notwithstanding, men who do not defend His Majesty, our King of England, against outrage done by his representative, the governor, have dared the king's awful displeasure and may have shown craven treason in failing to protect their Majesty's reputation. God save the king!
God save the king!
Silence!
God save the king!
God save the king! Silence! The court shall be cleared.
As the second day of the trial ended, it was rumored that His Grace began to inquire of his officials as to just what they thought they were doing. His Grace spoke with his usual candor.
Reveal that I am a thief, and tell me that if this printer calls me that, I must salute him and say, God save the king. What next?
Sir, if I may say so, you were amazing. That jury...
Oh, let me be. Mr. Smith, I don't think I was ever as young as you are. If I live another day, it'll be a miracle. But tomorrow I must stop pounding the table.
I don't understand, sir.
You will. Tomorrow we stop twisting the prosecutor's tail and start for the first time on the issue, the real issue. But now, let me be. Mr. Smith, will you wake me up at 3:30 in the morning and bring a Bible? With very large print. Good night, gentlemen.
And, sir, I warn you, any repetition and I shall find you in contempt. But you yourself will stand in jeopardy for treason.
Your pardon, sir. But if this court will so honor me, I will make an end of it. But I think I will never again stand in any courtroom, save one where very soon I must stand trial myself. Forgive me if my thoughts have taken a religious turn. If there be any among you who disbelieves God's word, signify by a nod. And I will omit this remark in deference to his opinion. Many of the words contained here whereon all of you and poor John Singer have sworn your oath, if interpreted by this court, would be libelous. For Moses, as one reads here, meek as he was, libeled Cain. And if truth be of no counting, who has not libeled the devil? Again, if anyone objects to these words, I will desist. If any man did publicly publish, in a manner displeasing his master, these verses from Isaiah, his watchmen are all blind, they are ignorant, yes, they are greedy dogs, and never can have enough. Then by law, as quoted by the Attorney General, they would be guilty of libel. Enough. John Singer never was on trial in this room. But your liberty as free men has been tried here. I labor under the weight of many years. But old and weak as I am, I would go to the utmost part of this land if I could be of any use in quenching persecution. People have the right to complain against the arbitrary acts of men in power. Men who oppress the people under their administration, provoke and make them cry out and complain, then make that very complaint the foundation of persecution and oppression. The question in this court has never been the cause of a poor printer on New York alone that we've been trying, but the question of liberty on the mainland of America. Gentlemen, with an impartial, uncorrupted verdict, we assure ourselves, our posterity, the right, the liberty of speaking and writing the truth.
Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Silence! Cheering in court is specially forbidden by the law of every land.
Shut up, Dick. Shake hands with the man in the dock I just got off. Thank you all very much.
I have only this, I believe, sir. You have got me back my freedom, and I have got back my little newspaper. I thought if I might print what you said out there, people might be interested. If you would let me, sir.
You're very flattering, sir. Yes.
Counselor, would you permit me?
How? I'd like to remove my robe myself this last time, but thank you, sir. I've always loved these little places back of a courtroom. We enter here in street clothes. Common, greedy men, full of bread, hired for money to go out there and fight in that arena. Here, we be gowned, be wigged, like stage actors, and make our entry solemnly as a procession of bishops. We become priests of justice. Well, it's a long journey. I'd rather be getting home.
In the small house in Philadelphia, he gathers again to the fire for the months remaining to him, there to await without fear the final guest who comes to awaken all men. Yet he would never realize that in the closing hours of his own life, there in the courtroom, part of the new America would begin. We have seen the end to one man's life, but not by any means to the enormous work which he began that last day in court. As some of you may have guessed, it is to be found in our Constitution, which old Andrew Hamilton never dreamed he would have a part in writing. After this announcement, we're going to have a look at it. The great footnote to this story, of course, lies in the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Old Andrew Hamilton that day in court was not so much defending his client with law that was already in existence, but was actually creating law that would not be clearly written down for generations to come. And when the Bill of Rights was first being written, there on the table lay a transcript of the case which we have just seen, which is why we tried to say in our title that Andrew Hamilton, or Grandpa, did change the world. And